Ever wonder how to do a timing belt? You're gonna see it all today from start to finish. Job will be complete and the car will be ready to go. You must have a timing belt issue. You must have been to the dealer and gotten a quote and it made you pee yourself just a little bit. Who the hell wants to do it anyways? It's a timing belt. Screw that. Just drive the car until you blow your motor. Do you own a Honda Accord? Is it a V6? Are you close to 100,000 miles? It's time to do your timing belt. Let's do it! So let's get right to it, guys. Job isn't too hard. We do need some specialty tools. That would be these here. This is to remove the crank pulley. It's on there very, very tight. And I have OEM Honda parts, including the serpentine belt. So we're gonna get everything done. There's the tensioner arm pulley, the idler itself, timing belt, and the water pump. We got good stuff, we're gonna get it done. We have to first remove the serpentine belt, right there. We're gonna push towards the firewall, serpentine will come loose. Pull it off. Next, we're gonna remove the motor mount so the engine will fall just a little bit. So what you make is a 1.5 by 1.5 by 1 3/4 block, and we put it right here. You put that as far under the CV axle as you can, so it actually goes under the body of it. Can't really show it to you guys, but that's what it is. Next, we're gonna remove the motor mount. The block is under there. We're gonna start with the 10mm, and we're gonna remove that ground. Next, the 14mm. Make sure you leave the bolts in there with a couple of threads on it. That way it doesn't twist when we take off the front bolt. And we got the bracket that needs to be out of the way. We want to remove the bracket off the back of the power steering line. It goes on the back side of the motor. And we also want to remove the bracket for the reservoir because we got to move this pump right here. Next, we're going to remove the power steering pump. For the top one here, you're going to need a 12mm. That's what size bolts they are on a swivel. That's the top bolt. And now for the bottom bolt. There's plastic housing that holds the coil pack wiring that's screwed to the top of the mount here. Next, main bolt, serpentine tensioner. 17mm ratcheting wrench. The second bolt is right there. It's got a shock on it. Once those two bolts are out, guys, tensioner comes through the top. Now, there's a plastic cover on the front of the motor where it covers the timing belt. There's two top lids, one on each part of the V, here, and then there's the bottom portion. We'll go down to the bottom to get that. We're gonna work from the top and bottom to get the bottom portion. But first, let's remove the two top lids. Looks like 5 bolts per cover. Ratcheting wrench for the other 3 on the rear cover. I released the strut tower support just so you can put your arm behind it. Little bit tough! Second cover. It's time to take the bottom cover off, but before we do that, we're gonna pull the crank. This is where I use the special tools. We're gonna go downtown, get that crank off. All right, guys, so we put the tool, the octagon, inside here, okay? It fits right into the crankshaft. Then we get it with another breaker bar, the 19mm bolt. So once that's in there, we got it jammed here, pretty good, okay? It ain't gonna move. So now, we're gonna pull hard, man. Woo! Wow! Now we got to take off all the 10mm bolts on the bottom cover. Now we have to time the motor before we remove the belt. There's a dot on the crank gear. I'm gonna mark it. So I marked all the spots with a yellow marker, okay? You see it there at the top of the gear? Right there? You see the line behind it on the housing? So that yellow spot there has to line up with that line there. Very close to it, as close as you can, with the crank at the bottom at 12 o'clock. Same thing here. That's at 12 o'clock. It's following the mark behind it. That's at 12 o'clock. It's following the mark behind it. Going down to the bottom, that's at 12 o'clock. The engine is timed. We want to keep it there. All right, so now we're going to remove the tensioner. See the tensioner pushing against the pulley there? Right there. That is what holds the tension on the belt. It's hydraulic, like a shock. And after 100,000 miles, usually they start, when you initially start it, you could hear it till it warms up, and it seems to go away on some cars. Some cars don't go away at all. So 10mm bolts, we're gonna bust those loose. We're gonna start removing them, and it's gonna swing out. Okay, folks, tensioner's off. All my yellow dots are now lined up with the lines. Now I'm working on the water pump. We got the housing off, the water pump housing, which was this. It's a real fun getting the bolts out, but it's doable. So now we need to remove the belt. Tension's off. As long as your dots are lined up, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Pull that sucker off, man. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. See how it's shiny and looks stretched? That sucker's been around town a few times. You know, fact of the matter is, this belt, depending how hard this thing was driven, could hold up to 150,000, maybe 200,000. But are you willing to take that risk? I'm not. Garbage, out! Now, my peeps, we got the idler arm, or the tensioner. It's a tensioner arm, and we have the idler itself that need to come out, and then finally the water pump. Okay, idler out! Son of a gun, out! All right, guys, water pump it is. 5 10mm bolts. That's one. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. Number 2, number 3, oh baby, number 4, and number 5. Make sure you got your catch can on the bottom. There it is. Fellas, let me get the gasket off. Bada boom, bada bing. Is it bad? No, it's not bad, but part of doing the job, man. You take the new water pump and you put antifreeze on the gasket. You lube it up and you make sure you clean the face where the old one came off, because there's grime around the gasket on the outside. Then when you remove it, it falls onto the face. Gotta make sure that face is clean. It will not seat properly and it won't seal. New water pump's on. Get our 5 bolts. Put them all on, finger. Just run them all the way down. Don't tighten them, obviously. We're gonna do it all at the same time, but you run it down. Getting these freaking awkward angles, man. 5 bolts torqued. Idler's going back on. Now the old tensioner arm. There's the bolt. Remove the sleeve, and the new one comes just like this. And there it is. Bolt's black on this one. So we put it in through the back. We got the bolt through the front, and there's our tensioner. Let's tighten that sucker up. Okay, my friends, we can reroute the belt now. It's a little tricky. You put the belt on. This is not my first time, obviously. Even on this same exact motor, I've done them before. So the belt's literally got to be on the right tooth. There's no putting it on the wrong tooth. If you do, it'll be a tooth off. It's literally from the right side of the motor. So from the front of the motor, you got to literally have it on the crank. You start it there and you pull it tight around to the tooth that almost doesn't want to go on, but it does go on. And you got to pull a little bit and pop it on. But be careful, because these sprockets here are under valve spring tension, and if you move this yellow dot a 1/4 inch either way, it's going to spring the valve open. So then you're going to be pulling it back, and it'll probably happen, or it'll probably happen to me. We're going to do our best. We're gonna start right here on the crank. We're gonna put it on, we're gonna put this bracket back on, okay? That way it holds the belt on the right teeth. You can stretch it as you go up. So I'll get those bolts on. All right, once you get that guard on the bottom, you go around the idler and you have this tight. You gotta have this tension. So we got gear number 1 that's lined up. That's for sure on point. Now gear number 2, we wanna turn it 1 tooth off, okay? That's how we get it to pop on. All right, let me see here. 1 tooth off, guys. All right, now we put it back. 1 tooth. And that, my friends, is how you time a Honda Accord. Yes, sir! Tensioner is back on. Everything is snug all the way around. Every tooth on this belt is exactly where it should be. The only place it could be. All right, guys, now that we got everything on, belt is snug, everything's lined up, that worked out great. So now I'm gonna put my 19mm on the crank. Every 2 revolutions on the crank, 1 full revolution on the sprockets, okay? We gotta make sure they line up after 2 revolutions. We're gonna do that probably twice. There it is, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Now that we have the belt on and everything's properly timed, it's time to start putting it back together. Start with the water pump housing. Goes over the top of the water pump. All right, guys, now for the bottom cover. I'm down here under the car. Hard to get to all these bolts on the bottom cover and the top for that matter, towards the firewall. Okay, got her in there, baby. Top lid, firewall side. You wanna make sure you slide the lid over the lip in order for it to be on properly. Right hand side, make sure it clicks in. This, see how it's a sandwich? In the middle, you gotta click it straight down. So you kind of put it in there first, and you pull back. Drop it in from the top. Tensioner's on. Got it, baby! Baby! Time to put the crank on, so let's take off the bolt. We had it on there so we can turn the crank. This ring's gotta go on. Now, if you see the ring, it's concaved. It's like this, okay? So we want that outwards, okay? The concave, outwards. On the key there. And it's in. Top of the mount. Okay, now, time to go back, Mr. Power Steering Pump. On the belt now. We got the belt on, man. I worked hard for that. All right, maybe we'll start it now. I think we did a good job, peeps. You've just witnessed the best automotive video on YouTube. The best. So this is one of many things that this vehicle needs. There'll be more videos showing all the steps that I take to make this car as good as new. If you guys enjoy anything about my videos, smash that like button like it stole your Pop-Tarts. And if that like button left you hungry, subscribe for more. We'll see you again. Peace.